Every leader has bad days. Most pretend they don't. This is the show where leaders stop pretending and start learning. Welcome to the Bad Days Leadership Podcast, where leaders pull back the curtain on decisions they cringe about, rooms they misread, and the failures that shaped everything after. Real leaders, real mistakes, real lessons. Because you can't become a great leader without a few bad days. Welcome back to the Bad Days Leadership Podcast, the place where we talk about leadership when it's messy, when it's uncomfortable, and very human. This show isn't about highlight reels or leadership quotes for Instagram. It's about what happens on the bad days and who we become because of them. Today's guest is someone I'm really excited to introduce you to. He understands both sides of leadership, both the results side and the responsibility side. I am joined today by Randy Gravitt, the CEO of Lead Every Day. Randy is an author, a speaker, an executive coach focused on leadership development and peak performance. Randy has coached NFL and MLB organizations, worked with Fortune 500 companies like Chick-fil-A and Kroger. He's authored 4 books, including Winning Begins at Home and Lead Every Day. He also hosts 2 podcasts and is deeply passionate about helping leaders win at work and at home, which makes him a perfect fit for the conversation we're going to have today. Randy, welcome to the Bad Days Leadership Podcast.
Hey, Matt, thank you for having me. I'm excited to hang out with you today. It's going to be a lot of fun. So it's going to be cool.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one for a while, and I just appreciate so much about what you and your team do and all the ways you do it. And I'm eager to hear some of the things that maybe don't get put into the maybe they are in the books. Maybe you'll tell some stories that are in the books, but these are the moments that we all learn from. And so I'm ready to jump in with you if you're ready to go.
Yeah, I am, and I love the name Bad Days Leadership. But I'm gonna go right off the top and just say I'm not sure there are any bad days in leadership. I just think there's a lot of days where we get to learn a lot of stuff. So, but they'll be good days. So
That's right.
I think we'll have a fun conversation.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate that. Let's start right here. Let's start with this word that often doesn't come up in leadership conversations unless somebody like a coach like yourself or I pushes people to think about, right? It is this word failure. Let's start with this word failure. It tends to be one of those things we talk about after it happens, but maybe not necessarily before. What would you tell, or what do you tell? I suspect maybe this comes up sometimes in your work. What would you tell a brand new leader about failure, especially the kind that feels public or personal or irreversible when you're just starting out as a leader?
It's such a great question. Let's start with there are degrees of failure. I mean, some of them, you can end up on CNN if you're, we're not really talking about that here. I mean, we want to talk about degrees here, or I won't talk so much about degrees, but here's what I will say. I think failure, if you're a young leader, if you're an old leader, I think failure, we've got to become friends with failure. It's just it's such an opportunity to grow when we mess up. It really is. It's just if everything goes well every day, I don't know that we learn anything. In fact, I read a blurb from somebody. I don't know if it was on Twitter back in the day or where I saw this, but some guy said if you're not failing 20% of the time as a leader, you're probably not growing. And I don't know if the percentages, I'm not sure how I would, but here's what I do know. I know if you're not friends with failure, you're never going to get to where you want to go. And it's just that growth mindset. And we say all the time, your capacity to grow is actually going to determine your capacity to lead. And so I think it's a huge, huge opportunity. I mean, you don't fail on purpose, but every time you do fail, you get a built-in opportunity to learn something that you never would learn had you not failed. So, and I would even say to every leader, not just the young leader, try stuff that's going to push you beyond what you're capable of, and you'll be surprised at how much you can achieve. But you also will be surprised at the lessons you learn when you fall short of what those big goals are. And so, I think failure. Number one thing I would say is just become friends with failure.
Yeah, I love that. So do you think that your perspective has changed on that over time?
I think I think it has, yeah, I mean, I'm old now, been around for a long time, been doing this for a while, and I would say when I was a young leader, I almost you're trying to avoid failure, and you're not really comfortable with what I just described. But I think the more you can lean into it at a young age, I'm so passionate about next generation leaders. I love, the idea of trying to encourage them. In fact, you introduced me as the CEO of Lead Every Day. I'm the chief encouragement officer. That's what the CEO means. It's like that's the opportunity to just invest in other people. And I would say, yeah, I've learned as I've gone all along the way. I've had plenty of opportunities, failed a lot, for sure. But I think early on I didn't appreciate just how powerful it can be when you mess up and you have an opportunity to really level up at that point, to learn some
Yeah.
things from that failure. So for sure.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. Failure has this kind of uncanny way, right, of either being a teacher for us or this weight that we carry for far too long. And I join you in appreciating the next generation of leadership and thinking long and hard about how do we encourage them. And I ask that question a lot, like, what do you do with failure? How do you feel about failure? And sometimes you get interesting looks like, oh, I don't fail. I win everywhere. It was like, well, let's talk about that too, but let's be realistic that there's going to be failure. And what are we going to do when we face it?
What
And I love that.
Yeah, I'll interrupt here and just say I think the image that we get when we go to social media is that everything's perfect with everybody. And I think it's almost the opposite of what I'm describing, that everybody thinks that failure is such a bad thing. But the reality is we all know that we're not perfect. We're not perfect as leaders. And I think if we are willing to admit to the people we lead, to admit to our teams that we're learning just like they are, they're going to follow that example, and they're going to learn from their failures as well. But if we pretend we've got it all together, first of all, they know we're a fraud. And secondly, they're not going to be as growth minded as we want them to be to get where we're trying to go. So I think it's a huge, I love that you started with that question.
Yeah. Well, it's mostly it's we try to mix up the questions from time to time, but that's a question we always try to ask because I just think there's too many people trying to fake their way through it and they don't admit. And so other leaders, they know they're faking it through, but they've never been shown, they've never been modeled how to deal with failure. Athletes kind of get it. I was talking to a college basketball coach just yesterday. Athletes and people in sports tend to get it a little bit because most people don't win every game. You lose, you learn lessons, you move forward, you try to win the next time out. But even that's, but even nowadays, everybody gets a trophy at the end of the season anyway, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's an important piece of the puzzle that we have to navigate as we think about how do we develop ourselves as leaders and develop others. So you've been doing this leadership development work for how long? How long, when people say how long have you been doing this? How long do you consider that you've been in the leadership development business?
Yeah, I'd honestly say, as crazy as it sounds and time's flown by, but really it's been 40 years now. I started out coaching and teaching in a high school just right out of college, and I'll be 61 this year. And from that time until today, I've been in some kind of leadership development space, and yeah, it's been it's been a fun journey for sure, but a lot of good days, but a lot of challenging
Yeah.
days. I don't want to pretend there aren't any bad days, for sure.
No, we'll get into that. We're going to get into that, I promise. So looking back over that 4 decades, what a tremendous blessing you've probably been over 4 decades as you've thought of yourself as a coach. Whether you were in a high school setting or in a corporate setting, you've coached leaders, you've written books, you've led in organizations at a high level. What's something when you think back, what's something that you wish someone had told you about leadership when you were a young leader, maybe an emerging leader, young professional early on? What's something that you share now that you wish you had learned back then?
Yeah, I actually want to go back to our conversation earlier because I think that's what I would want. I would have wanted to know is this idea of failure, and I want to frame it just a little bit differently. So
Mhm.
you're talking about athletes a minute ago, and let's just take it's baseball season. Let's take baseball here for a second. if a guy gets on base 3 out of every 10 times, he's a 300 hitter at that point.
He's a Hall of Famer.
We'll put him in a Hall of Fame, exactly. But what kind of mindset does it take to to lose 7 out of every 10 times and keep showing up and working hard and staying resilient? And I think that resilient mindset is, as I look back when I was younger, especially, is I always wanted to just keep getting up. I mean, and I think that, and I'm still, I'm still here fighting for it 40 years later. And I think if there's anything that can be said about a leader that when it's all said and done, is that they stayed in the game, they stayed in the fight. I know so many leaders, they just lose heart at some point along the way when they fail, and they give up and throw in the towel. And I think if we're going to do anything right, it is we're going to stay in the fight and we're going to keep working hard to finish well. That to me is huge. And I mean, even think about a baseball team at the end of the year. If a team wins 100 games, that they'll be probably the best, one of the best teams in the league, the whole league, which means that the best team in the world will lose about 60 games. I mean, it's like you'd think they'd win every day. They don't. And so just the mindset to keep losing and keep showing up, I think is huge. And so when I go all the way back, it's that resilience. I wish I'd known even more how important that was when I was younger. But I learned along the way, and we all kind of learn, from our experiences. But I think that's one thing that I wish somebody had told me even more so. Like, you just keep fighting, you keep growing, and if you'll do that, it's almost like, I think of it almost like a like a bank account or an investment fund. Like it grows over time. There's that principle grows, and I think that growth mindset to keep growing, you can't start young enough. And so I would encourage every leader who's listening, no matter what age you are, become a learner. It's just, to me, that's huge.
That's such a good word. It is about putting those deposits in, watching them grow. There's going to be withdrawals at times, but overall, the big picture, right?
Exactly.
My son and I were just talking about investment strategies. He's 13. He want to know about investment strategies. I say, well, the first thing you got to remember is that time is money.
Yeah.
And you need the time, because there's going to be some good days and some bad days. Same thing with leadership.
For
Over
sure.
time. It's not just this moment. It's all of it. It's a connected series of decisions and life experiences and opportunities and all those things. And so as you talk about leadership, and as we talk about leadership with clients and just people we come into contact with, I think we probably both have bumped into those moments where we recognize the pain, maybe, or the hurt caused by a bad leader, someone who, whether it was intentional or not, may have said something that stuck with us, or somebody that we know. What's something a bad leader may have said to you, or that you experienced, or maybe a bad leadership season that you experienced, that one, you'll never forget, and two, helped shape you into who you are today as a leader, because you said, I don't want to be like that?
Yeah, I think back to some early leaders that I had who were negative, toward me, toward teammates. And I didn't, at the time, I didn't understand how I would carry those words with me later on. And I think sometimes we forget just how important our voice is as a leader, just the things we say. I don't know, I'm a Bible reader, and there's an old Bible verse that says, words kill, words give life. They're either poison or fruit. You get to choose as the speaker. You get to choose. You're going to use poison words or words that are going to bring fruit to somebody. And I love that old proverb. It's just a great reminder that words really, the guy that said sticks and stones break your bones, I mean, that guy was an idiot. I mean, they really can kill you.
Yeah.
And so I think as I look back, some of those words that were spoken early, I wish I could have understood just that was a bad leader. That was not, everybody around them wasn't bad. It was just the negativity of that person. And what I would say is the residue of a leader's life. In fact, when I think about bad days, leadership, I'm not even sure. Again, I said it earlier. I'm not sure there are bad days. I think they're just bad leaders. And bad leaders are negative leaders. They're critical leaders. They shame people. They blame people. They don't really accept responsibility for what we're trying to do. And to me, if you're going to be in that leadership seat, you're the one who creates the culture. You're the one who creates the language. You're the one who creates the communication or the lack of it, and what we're going to say. And I don't think you can go to a positive place with a negative mindset or with negative, with negative people even. It's like we've got to create some kind of positivity. And so I think back to that, very early on, and that kind of stuff. It really does affect people. And when I say there are bad leaders, think about it for a second. If you're a person listening to this and you have a good leader, things are really good for you. And if you have a bad leader, there's just nothing much worse than having a bad leader and you go to work every day and it's just hard to be you can be with somebody and not really be with them. And so I want to just encourage people to understand that the leader's voice, I mean, let's just start back that voice. The leader's voice really is the loudest voice. And what we say carries way more weight than we think it does. Now, I will say this, I think the leader's example is louder than her voice. So but what we say matters and how we say it matters. And I think if we're going to do anything, let's create a positive environment versus a negative, because we feel that if we're on the receiving end of that, the residue of that leader's life spills over on us, no matter whether it's, what they say or how they act or what they do. We're gonna watch their example. We always say people always watch the leader, and so we're gonna model we're gonna follow what they model. And so I think that's important. But if you want to listen, for a negative team, it typically is following a negative leader. And so that's kind of where my mind goes when you ask that question.
Well, that's such a powerful reminder that leaders are always speaking into someone's story, right? Whether they realize it or not. The best leaders, the worst leaders, the ones that inspire us, the ones that discourage us, they're leaders, and especially positional leaders in organizations, are always speaking into someone else's story. And that's such a powerful reminder that you just shared with us. I appreciate that. So, as you have experienced leadership, have you ever watched a leader? Maybe it's someone you're coaching, maybe it's someone you were on a team with at some point along the way. Have you ever watched a leader completely misread a room? Like everything they said or did just landed wrong. And maybe you have a story you can share about that, but I think there's so many moments when leaders misread the room, and there's some lessons to be learned from that. Tell us about one.
Yeah, I want to broad stroke this rather than a story. I just say anytime a leader goes into a room with a lack of humility, and we base a lot of what we talk about on this idea of servant leadership, and it gets such a bad rap because we think it means being a doormat. It's really not what we're talking about. A servant leader is one who just shows up and is thinking, how can I help the people in the room win? We use a picture of an offensive lineman. I'll use a sports metaphor here again. An offensive lineman, if I ask you to name a football player, I do this in rooms all the time, and everybody will say Tom Brady or, Peyton Manning, which they don't even play football anymore, and people still that's who comes to mind,
Yep.
or Patrick Mahomes, some quarterback. Nobody's ever, the left guard for the Arizona Cardinals or the right, tackle for the Tennessee Titans. You never hear their name. I mean, their parents know their name, but other than that, nobody even knows who these people are. And yet these guys show up game after game after game, practice after practice, and they open up a hole so somebody else can score. That's the mindset of a really great leader who walks into a room. How can I help everybody in this room win? I think the leaders I've watched misread rooms walk in the room and they're self-serving leaders, not serving leaders. They're thinking, how can this room add value to me? How can I extract value from all these employees or team members rather than add value? And to me, the leaders that add value the most, they're the ones that are the most valuable when it's all said and done. And I think sometimes we just mistake, I've got the business card or I've got the corner office or I've got the parking spot, and you're going to do what I say. And those leaders, they not just the room, they misread it all. To me, humility creates space and pride takes up space. And so I think that leader who comes in and creates space for everybody to flourish, they're developing more leaders. those are the ones that to me are the leaders that I love following, that I've loved being with. I will say this, I'll get a little more specific here. The way it plays out when I've watched this, error specifically is they talk too much. They don't listen enough. And all of us, by the way, as leaders, we're talkers. I mean, I get that. Or we should have a vision. We have something to say. But if we're not careful, we'll take up all the space again out of arrogance and not listen to what's going on. And to me, so many times the people who are closest to the problems are closest to the solutions. And yet we don't ever listen to them. We don't let them weigh in on what's going on. And
That's right.
we just think we have all the answers. And so to me, that leader who comes into a room and thinks it's about them, they're the ones who, they misread not just the room, they misread it all. We're here to serve people. We're here to help people win. And I think we lie down at night and can put our head on our pillow and think, who did I help win today? That's a pretty good day. I mean, to me, that makes you a winner. And if all you're doing is, who can help me win today? I don't want to be on that team. I don't know about you.
Yeah.
So
I hear you.
that's kind of where that's where my mind goes with that question.
No, I love that, and I appreciate you drawing the phrase servant leadership out. We just finished, launching a book in the last week on the core of leadership, which is our take on servant leadership.
Oh, that's great.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. But that whole idea that leadership is not our skills, it's not how well we communicate. I mean, those are all tools in the toolkit that leaders must possess.
Yeah.
But it starts with who a leader is.
Yeah.
And not just who they are, but why do they lead in the first place? Who are they working for?
Yeah.
Now we can go really theological there. We can also talk about, from the book of Esther, as we do, leadership, as Mordecai is described in the last verse of the book of Esther, is working for the good of the people and speaking up for their welfare.
Well, and that to me, we use a picture of an iceberg when we talk about leadership in a holistic way. And the 10% above the waterline is our skills. You have to have skills. You can't. I mean, I know a bunch of people have a really great heart. That's the character piece, is the 90% below the waterline. I know a lot of great people who've got a really great heart, but they couldn't lead us out of a room if it caught on fire and their exits marked everywhere. I mean, they don't have the skills. So you have to have both. But under a lot of people that I jokingly say, I think I'd rather stay here than burn than follow them, because their character is not intact. And to me, that's the integration of skills and heart. I mean, it is, you use the verse from Esther. There's a verse, Psalm 78:72 talks about King David. It says that he shepherded his people with integrity of heart, and with skillful hands he led them. You have to have both.
Both, yeah.
And when we have that integration, it is, I mean, that's our word integrity, right? I mean, it's the math word, for integer. It's a whole number, versus somebody who's disintegrated, or their character's blown apart, or they say one thing in public and in private they're another way, or they act this way at work and then they come home and treat their family that way. It's like there's a lack of integration there. And so I think this is a huge deal. To me, the best leaders, they have that integrity, they have that character, but they also have those skills, and there's a meshing of that, versus somebody who's, they look good on the surface, but when you get to know them, they're just like, it's just not there. So I think
it's
constantly working on that.
Yeah, we have to. It's a congruence between what we say we value, what we say we hold dear, and our actions. That those match up. They're in alignment. And that's such a big deal. Such a big deal. So with your experience, I imagine there are leadership, maybe red flags that you can spot instantly now. I love this question. We've asked it of several people on this show. Maybe early in your career, you didn't see these as red flags. But now when you see them, based on your years of leadership experience and observation of leaders, what's a red flag that you pick up on almost immediately now?
Well, I think leaders, how they say things is just as important as what they say. I'll go back to that a little bit. To me, we have to say what we have to say, but we need to say that in the right way. And being harsh, my wife tells me saying it louder doesn't make you more right. I think that's great.
Yeah.
I
think I've heard that one too.
And I think sometimes I've been around leaders, they think I'll raise my voice, or I'll just throw in some profanity, or I'll make it louder, or I'll say it in front of everybody, and you'll get the point this time. And, being reminded 100 times has never made me more aware. I need to be aware. I need to be accountable. If you ask me to do something and I don't do it, there needs to be consequences for that and accountability for that. But I think we've gotten so far away from accountability being a gift. And to me, as servant leader, if I really care about you, I'm going to hold you accountable to what you said you're going to do. That's another way I can serve you. And yet I don't have to shame you to do that. I can, we can sit down and have a conversation, why is this not happening without me berating you? And I think sometimes that to me is a red flag just automatically. If somebody is berating somebody else, they don't understand that this is a person too. They may not have the position or they may not have the power, but they really do have dignity, and people need to be, they need to be validated. They don't need to be tolerated. They need to be validated. They need to be built up. And do they need to be accountable? Absolutely. But if we think, again, saying it louder is going to change their mind. I heard somebody say one time, you're never persuasive when you're abrasive. And I thought a lot about that. I've never been more motivated because somebody said it to me in a more harsh way. That actually demotivates people. And it's going to hurt the credibility of the leader if they don't say the right thing in the right way. So to me, that's a red flag. And then I would also say this, it's a little different, similar, but I think the leader that makes a big deal out of small things is that's a red flag to me as well. I mean, sometimes it's amazing the hill we'll decide to die on, and yet we'll let big stuff go. So I think when I try to pay attention to, like, is this a big deal? And we need to maybe have a conversation about it. But to me, those are some of the things that I see, and I'm like, this is a problem here. And again, I'll go back to something we said earlier. If a leader doesn't listen, all they're doing is talking. They're not listening to others. And I think this is a challenge. I think it's a challenge for me. I mean, to be a good listener. It's something I have to continue. I mean, you'd think after this many years I'd have that right, and it's maybe the biggest challenge you have as a leader sometimes, because what we should do, or the right thing, or maybe you were over that department before, and but you got to give your people. I say your people, they're not really your people; they're just people. You've got to give people an opportunity to grow themselves and to fail themselves. And there's times you'll have to put a safety net there, and then there's times you need to just circle back and say, okay, what went wrong and how can we make it better next time? And they'll learn great lessons from that. But if we're only just like, everything has to be this way or that way, honestly, what happens is I end up carrying a load myself and not allowing anybody else to. And now I'm exhausted. I'm buried in the busyness of the business. Nobody else is really engaged like they need to be, because here comes the boss. He's going to do it anyway. And again, that's just, to me, a lack of humility on the part of that leader, and it stunts the organization.
Yeah, the hardest chapter for me to write in the book was the one about the principle, lead with your ears.
Yeah.
For the same thing you just mentioned. It's real, but it's so important. So from your experience as an executive coach, just to bounce off something you said, do you think that red flags can be corrected? Or are they usually just such deep character issues that it's a struggle for people to begin to see those and operate differently? Does that question make sense? I mean, I guess from your experience, when you see somebody and you call them on it and you say, hey, I've noticed this about you. Do you think those things can get corrected?
I do think they can be corrected. I like, we don't get do-overs. Let's say it this way. We don't get do-overs. I mean, when I do something, there is residue from that. People feel the weight of that. They if I mess up in a bad way, it can affect a lot of people. But we do get start-overs. We do get opportunities to start fresh. Now, there are things, if I end up on CNN, I probably can disqualify myself from my job. I'm out.
Yeah.
And so I understand. Again, I said earlier, I won't talk about degrees, but I will just say this. There are things that you as a leader need to make sure you're creating that safety net, where if you're going to let somebody lead, 10 minutes of a meeting where there's only four, our 4 people on our leadership team are there and I'm trying to groom somebody to take over this team, can they lead 10 minutes of the meeting? If they can't handle 10 minutes, they'll never lead the whole meeting. And so I'm trying to do that. That's different than me having somebody make a 10-minute presentation to a client. I want to give them some baby steps. I want to give them something. Can they handle this before we give them that? And so that safety net mindset is good there, but I still want to give them room to fail, even if they're pitching to a client. I mean, they're not going to know how to do that perfectly. I just want to make sure I have the right people in the room in the right settings. But I think sometimes we give up on people too fast. And how many of us have, I mean, we're just at such a good place down the road, and we never would have gotten there had somebody not been patient with us and given us a start over, given us another chance. And at my age, I've had way more chances than I've deserved for sure. But I think creating that kind of environment is huge. But again, we want to do it with accountability. I think so many times what we do is let's just play out a scenario. We got 90 days here and the guy doesn't get it right for, first week, the second week, the third week, the ninth week. We're getting close to 90 days now and I've not said anything. And then I'm wondering, how's he going to receive it when I come talk to him and tell him he's not on the team anymore? That to me is bad leadership. That's not on the, I'm enabling it all along the way. And so if I see something, I'll just say something. If it's really not right and it needs to be challenged, I need to challenge it. And I think to me, the way I would frame this is let's give high challenge, but couple it with high support. Like if I challenge you on something, but I've got your back and I really have your best interest at heart, I think you're much more willing to be challenged and to grow. But if I never challenge you and I just pretend I've got support and then I, cut you, I mean, it's just how many people have suffered because leaders weren't willing to go there. And I think sometimes we honestly don't feel like we have time to have those kind of conversations because we got all this other work. To me, that is the work.
That is the work of the leader.
You can lead these people to get to a place where they can lead the work. That is the work of a leader. And so I think sometimes we shy away from that because we're buried in all that busyness and, that shame on us at that point.
Yeah. I think the awareness like that, which you're talking about and describing, only comes or most often comes after some bruises. All right. And usually after seeing the consequences of those, like we talked about earlier, those failures or those challenges or that 10-minute presentation that didn't go quite right, that's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we're formed. Right. So as we move towards the last question or two here, this one feels like really close to the heart of why we started this podcast. What's something you used to think was great leadership, but now it actually wasn't?
Yeah, that's such a maybe even loaded question. When I think about great leadership, I learned a long time ago. I've known this for a while now, but I learned a long time ago. If your heart's not right, nobody really cares about your skills. And I think when I'm younger, I'm thinking, you're so enamored with somebody's skills, their ability to build a team or lead a meeting, or they're always solving problems. They cast these great visions. But if their heart is not right, nobody gives a rip about your skills. And I think sometimes we underestimate. This happened in my own life. I remember when I was in my early 20s, there were places in my life where there was an incongruence with what I pretended on in the public and what was going on in my heart in private. They just didn't match. And I, I learned I guess at that point, but all along the way, what I've watched is character. We think it implodes. We think somebody blew their life up. They messed up. They forfeited their leadership. Character really doesn't implode. Character erodes. We're locked into where we should be on day one until, I don't know, day 9 or day 99. At some point we get a little off. We're not quite as engaged. Somebody's a little negative and it's affected us and our attitude's a little off. And we feel bad about that. And so then we go back to where we were on day one. We try to readjust at that point. And until, day 149 and we get off again. And now not only that, we get pulled into the conversation a little bit. And now we're a little negative with the person who's being negative, or we got an attitude that's become a little bit toxic or critical. And so now we're over here at layer number 3, and we feel really bad about that. But rather than going back to day 1 where we know our heart should be, we go back to where we were the day before. And it just this slow erosion, Matt, over time. And so many leaders forfeit their ultimately their legacy. I mean, we see people, it seems like they go the distance, but they don't quite get there. It's like they just, at some point, they find themselves in a room with somebody they shouldn't be in a room with. They've got a habit they shouldn't have, some kind of destructive mindset, or disengaged. They've pulled out. They're not giving their best. And it's just like, it looks like it implodes, but really it's just been this slow erosion all along that leaders haven't paid attention to. And I think skills are important. We should be developing them every day, but that character test is going to come every day. And I would just encourage leaders to keep passing that. And when I say character, we use a little acronym for H.E.A.R.T that I'll give real quick if we've got time.
Yeah, please.
This H.E.A.R.T. Do we hunger for wisdom? Are we really hungry to gain wisdom? Or are we trying to grow, basically? Do we expect the best? Do we have this attitude that we can make things better? Or are we just expecting like it's never going to go right and somebody else, is in charge and I don't have agency? I think really great leaders, they feel like I'm going to show up and I'm going to do what I can. I can't control it all, but what I can control is my attitude, my effort, my unity with everybody else, and that expect the best mindset. Do I accept responsibility for my actions and the actions of the people I lead? To me, those leaders are so powerful when they really do understand that, what's the old buck stops here. It's like, I'm going to take responsibility for what I signed up for, and then respond with courage is, it'd be great if we did the podcast over in New Zealand and we're bungee jumping and helicopter riding. That's not the kind of courage I'm talking about. I'm talking about, am I willing to admit when I'm wrong? Am I willing to hold somebody accountable? Am I willing to have a hard conversation? To me, really great leaders respond with courage. And this is a heart issue. Am I willing to do that? And then the last one is really the first one. Do I think others first? It goes back to what we talked about, being a servant leader. If I can show up and open up a hole so somebody else can win, I think I'm on the path to creating impact that is really unparalleled at that point. It's just the best way to do it. So hunger for wisdom, expect the best, accept responsibility, respond with courage, and think others first. To me, those 5 little heart habits are things that we constantly have to work on every day. And I'll close with this one example. So just a little while back, I'm up here in Atlanta and I'm merging. I say I'm merging. There's a lady who, actually, I say she doesn't know how to drive. She's trying to merge into the lane. I mean, I'm in a big truck. I drive a big truck. And I'm thinking, lady, you can't be serious. You're going to try to, and when I say in traffic, we're going literally standstill. I was like 1 mile an hour. We're barely moving. And she's bringing this little car over on my truck. And I'm like, what are you doing? And I'm thinking, this is not going to happen. And so I'm like, we don't get to blow the horns very much. So I just lay down on my horn, and I'm thinking, she's going to get the message. And I look over there to see how she responds. And as I do, the guy in front of me pulls up and she just whips it in front of me. And I'm just losing my mind thinking, how in the world are you like doing this? And yet here you talk about bad leadership. Here I am on my way to speak to a company, and we're talking about this. They're literally going through those 5 heart habits that morning. And I'm going to train these guys on this stuff, this franchise business. They got like 20 franchises, or 20 locations with their franchise. And I'm going to train them. And I'm sitting here thinking, Randy, you are an hour. I'm literally an hour early, man. I'm not even in a hurry. And here I am. I wrote this content, helped write it. I'm going to talk, I'm the guy in charge. I'm the guy I'm old. I mean, I'd like, how can you not know better at this point? And here I am, not willing to yield my spot to somebody who probably is in way more of a hurry than I was. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, we have to keep working on this, because I love me some me, and I'm guessing everybody that's listening, you love you some you, and so it's just like we're gonna have to constantly work on these things. If we don't, I think we're gonna end up forfeiting our leadership, and to me, again, there are no bad days, they're just bad leaders. They're leaders who, like me, who just have to keep working on it and making progress, and I would just encourage us all to try to do that. I mean, it's to me, it's just a decision, and if we make the right decision, a lot of people are gonna really benefit from that.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate your candor on that. I appreciate your thoughts on that. I appreciate this conversation. It's really captured kind of the essence of what we talk about on this show, that leadership isn't about avoiding, as we say, bad days, but learning how to not let those bad days define us.
Yeah.
What are those lessons we can learn? Your focus in your work on winning at home and at work is such an important reminder for all of us and everybody listening, that success in one area doesn't justify burnout or broken relationships in another. And for those listening, if today's episode resonated with you, I encourage you to reflect maybe for just a few minutes on this question: what kind of leader are you becoming on your bad days? What kind of leader are you becoming on your bad days? Think about that one. Randy Gravitt, thanks again for being here. Tell us a little bit about what's coming up for you and your work, and just what are you excited about that you want to tell us about?
Yeah. Okay. So I'll give you two things. So Mark Miller and Mark was the vice president of high performance leadership at Chick-fil-A and he was there for 40 plus years. Um, a couple years ago, left Chick-fil-A, has joined me at Lead Every Day, and we just wrote Lead Every Day this last year. So I'll hold up the book here.
Yeah,
This book is a book that is basically these three disciplines that make up what we call our Lead Everyday operating system. You think about the operating system in your phone, it is behind the scene helping process all the apps and the phone calls and all this kind of stuff. I think we need an operating system for our leadership. So many of us,
absolutely.
we don't really have I'll go back to my educational background back in the day, a scope and sequence. If you have a first grader, you don't put them in first grade and expect them to get a calculus book. You expect them to get some numbers, and there's a sequence along the way that they can get to calculus. I think sometimes we put people in leadership in our companies, and our training for them is, if you need something, let me know, and we just send them out on their own. We have not taught them how to lead a meeting or build a team or solve problems or cast vision or any of that stuff we talked about earlier. And so what we did is we thought, let's create this book that really is the content we've created for Chick-fil-A over the last 15 years around these three big ideas to become a better leader, to improve team performance, and to strengthen the organization. So if you're leading any team or organization, you're just trying to become better in your own leadership, I would encourage you to get a copy of Lead Every Day. Mark and I, we're excited about that. It's a lot of the content that we train in companies. If we can help your company, we'd love to do that. We do workshops and all that kind of stuff. Our team does, and that's fun. And then I do want to say something. You mentioned winning begins at home. I brought a copy of that as well here. I
Great.
know Father's Day's coming up. This will make a fantastic little Father's Day gift. It's an easy read, but I'll just say one thing about it. So I've worked with all these executives and all these teams and all these coaches and leaders. It's been great. And they keep saying, the stuff y'all are talking about is working in our work life, but I've got some issues going on outside. I kept noticing people were struggling outside of work, and I couldn't find anything for leaders to help them build a great family, frankly. And I mean, there are some resources out there on marriage and parenting, but this is just a pretty simple little way to create a blueprint to help your family life. And so if you've got anybody, man or woman, in your life who's trying to have a great family, there's some couple of simple little fundamentals here that we teach. What we say is basically, if you win at work and you lose at home, I think you still lose. I don't know anybody's trying to build a really great like business but yet I don't care about my family. Nobody thinks that way. And yet we know it's hard, it's a struggle. And so this is just such a simple little read, but I say that there's a 120-page parable about a businessman in the front, and then there's a 70-page blueprint in the back that you can work through with the people in your small group, your family, whoever you want to, but you literally can create a blueprint to help you have the family of your dreams. And we're excited about that. So those would be the two things. If we can help you, reach out. You can find me, Randy Gravitt, or you just go to leadeveryday.com, find all the info you want on us. But yeah, we're excited about helping leaders. We believe what you do. If you help leaders get better, it makes it all better. And we dream about a world being well led.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that. Appreciate what you guys are doing over there. Obviously, we're doing very similar things, but as I was taught as a young professional in Christian higher education from a well-respected leader, there is no competition amongst lighthouses, and so we want to support what you're doing, and I know you do the same.
Hey man,
Uh,
we're cheering for you. Endorse your book. We're excited about
yeah,
what you're doing too.
yeah,
There's a lot of people that need help. So we're
yeah. Well,
we're,
for sure, for sure, and I do appreciate you endorsing the book. And to our listeners, if this episode has helped you, we would love it if you would please like, subscribe, go in there and give it a 5-star rating if you feel inclined, and then share it with someone who is leading, maybe through a tough season. Maybe seems to be having some bad days. Let's give them some encouragement that there are people who come out of those bad days on the other side better and stronger, more effective in their leadership. We all go through it, and we all know that there is hope on the other side, that we want to be encouraging for you. And so please join us next time on the Bad Days Leadership Podcast.